That was Bachman Turner Overdrive with their number one hit of 1974, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, right here on the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop. BTO is currently on tour and will be performing in our area on Wednesday the 29th at the Bergen Pack in Englewood, New Jersey, and on Friday, Halloween, in fact, at the Borgata in Atlantic City. It's a great thrill to welcome founding member of both the Guess Who and BTO, Randy Bachman, to the program. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks. I'm glad to be on and happy to be coming back to this area, especially at the end of the summer. Halloween ends it all.
You know, I'm going to start off this interview on a bit of a side tangent because in addition to hosting this radio show, I also put out a monthly podcast reviewing the records of Cliff Richard and the Shadows. And as I understand it, they were one of your early influences. Growing
up in Winnipeg, I started playing violin when I was 5, and all you play on a violin is melody. And so when I was 14, and this is a classical violin, so I'm playing Chopin and Tchaikovsky and stuff, I got really tired of playing classical music. The music was changing on the radio. And my cousins had a guitar, and they were going fishing for the week. And I said, can I borrow your guitar? I want to learn to play it. And they said, yeah. When they came back 3 days later, I could play everything that was on the radio. And they said, how did you figure this out? And I said, I could play lead on violin. I just played on guitar. I find the notes and I could play it. And then we started to get records from England, and everything that was on the radio at the time, everybody in town was learning. I mean, they're learning Elvis, they're learning Gene Vincent, Chuck Berry, and we had a cousin in England that would send us British records, Shane Fenton and the Fentones, Cliff Richard and the Shadows. I loved them because the Shadows were their own band, and then when they backed Cliff Richard, they had double barrel shot, right? And so we copied them. We were called Chad Allen and the Reflections, just to be like Cliff Richard and the Shadows. And we played all the Shadows music, and we were the best band in town. And then another young gun came to town. His name was Neil Young. He was also influenced by the Shadows, so he and I were competitors all of that time. And like 62, 63, 64, we're just teenagers. And then I had hit with the Guess Who called Shakin All Over. And I went to New York in 64 and said to Neil, now that we left town, you're the top band. They were called Neil Young and the Squires. You're the top band, but you've gone as far as you can go. Sooner or later, you got to go to the edge and jump. We've jumped. We're in New York. We're working with Bacharach and David, Ashford and Simpson. We're backing the Shirelles. We're touring with Dion and the Belmonts and the Kingsmen, the Louie tour. We're playing with Bill Haley and the Comets. We're playing with Chuck Berry. You need to leave Winnipeg. He left Winnipeg, met Stephen Stills, started Buffalo Springfield. But when he plays a guitar solo, it still sounds like Hank Marvin from the Shadows. When I play a solo, it's like, listen to You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. The solo in there is pure Hank Marvin. So we grew up. When I auditioned for the Guess Who, they wanted me to play rhythm guitar. They gave me an EP, which is, a 45 with 4 songs on, Out of the Shadows. Then they gave me the album, Out of the Shadows, the first album. And they gave me a Living Doll and something by Cliff Richard, Dynamite. And I went to the first rehearsal, and I learned all the chords. I didn't know what they were, but I figured them out by nose. I didn't know what they were called. And the lead guitar player broke a string, and I finished playing the song. And they said, wow, you can play lead. And I said, yeah, that's all. I really can play lead. I've been playing violin since I was 5. I was 14 at the time, 15. They said, okay, you can be the lead guitar player. So I became the lead guitar player. Neil Young became the lead guitar player. We both bought an orange Gretsch guitar that came in the window at Winnipeg Piano. I bought one, he bought the other. I got mine back last year. I just got him his back 2 months ago. He sold his, mine was stolen. We both have our orange Gretches back. In 2 weeks, I'm going to Neil Young's 80th birthday party in Malibu and get pictures taken of me with my old orange Gretsch in 1957 and his with his old orange 1957 Gretsch. So we've been buddies all along. And a few years ago, we got invited to the Shadows' 50th anniversary at the O2 in London and at the Odeon for the whole week, the Hammersmith Odeon, with Cliff Richards. And we went to that, and we met them for the first time. So I have pictures of me, and I took with me my Hank Marvin white Burns guitar. He autographed the pick guard. I took his spare amp I got from Vox, a Vox AC30, and he wrote on the back Hank Marvin and Brian Bennett and Bruce Welch, who's a really good buddy of mine. So we're still Shadows fans, and we saw them play there. We went in the afternoon. when they were rehearsing and they saw us in the front row. Nobody else was in there. They're just doing a sound check. And we go over and meet them, and Hank hands me that red Stratocaster. That's not even his. It's Bruce Welch's, and he's played it on every hit, but it's owned by Bruce Welch. And they were really cool because in the old days, we didn't even have a singer. We had one amplifier. We plugged 2 guitars and a bass in there, and the drummer just played drums. I would play all evening, 3 hours of the Shadows and Dwayne Eddy and, a couple others, and Sleepwalk. And we had to play a waltz. You played Sleepwalk. We played 3 hours that way. Then we got a microphone. You plugged into the amp, and we had a singer like Cliff Richard, who was Chad Allen. And here I am today talking about it, which is amazing. And I'm thrilled that you did that, because we had a show in Winnipeg every Sunday morning called Out of England. And the DJ there would get he had a friend in London who'd send him the 45s. So he would play all the new English stuff, and then he'd give the records to us. So that's why we became a different sounding band, as did Neil Young and the Squires, was copying Cliff Richard and the Shadows.
That's amazing, and that answers the question, because I wondered how you would have heard Shakin' All Over by Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, because in the U.S. that wasn't known at all. I don't know what the situation was like in Canada.
No, we couldn't afford, nobody could afford anything in those days. Chad Allen had a cousin in England who would get, at Christmas time, get all of her friends 45s, and they would tape them. And at Christmas time, or a week after, we'd get a 7.5-inch reel and put it on. We didn't even know what the songs were called. She just said it's a real thing, Merry Christmas. And on it would be, Cliff Richard and the Shadows, Shane Fenton and the Fentones, Marty Wilde and the Wildcats, the Tornadoes, on and on. Adam, all these records, and we would get them and learn them. We didn't even know what they were called, but they were amazing. And one of them was Shakin' All Over, Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. We started to play that, and the kids loved it at the dances, because it was different than anything on the radio at the time. And that song, the bass riff in Shakin' All Over, inspired John Paul Jones, who ended up being in Zeppelin. It inspired John Deacon, who ended up being in Queen. It inspired John Entwistle, who ended up being in The Who. It inspired a lot of bass players, and that was our big hit record. And we were called Chad Allen and the Reflections. When we sent it into our record label, they said, you can't use this name, because there's a band called The Reflections that has a hit called Just Like Romeo and Juliet. You need another name. And we couldn't find another name. And then they said, we want to put this out now to take advantage of the British invasion. This is like late 63, early 64. So they said, we're going to put out a white label to 50 radio stations. We're going to put on Shakin' All Over on a white label. And underneath it, we're going to put Guess Who, and find a name so we could tell them who Guess Who was. We couldn't find a name, and they ended up calling us the Guess Who. That ended up being our name. And so that's how we got our name, was from copying Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. And I have a white Johnny Kidd and the Pirates on Spartan Records promotion copy of Shakin' All Over. And I've got ours. They only made 50, and somebody sent me one from Northern Canada when they were shutting down jukeboxes about 20 years ago. I have the original one of us playing Shakin' All Over, and it changed my life. It changed everybody's life.
Before I move on to BTO, can I ask you about one more Guess Who song?
Yeah, sure.
The song These Eyes, because as I understand it at first, you didn't really want to release it as a single.
No, we were pretty much a rock band. Neil Young was a rock band. We were a rock band. We did all the Shadows stuff, which is a lot of, at the time, it was like very radical. Now it's very middle of the road, because it wasn't distorted, very clean guitar. Dwayne Eddy was clean guitar. The Ventures were a little bit dirty when they did Walk, Don't Run, but we were influenced at the time. So when you put out an album, you try to have a heavy rock song, a jazzy song, a pop song, a ballad, an acid rock song like The Doors, like The End or something like that. You try to copy what's on the hit parade, because you're hoping somebody will like something on your album. And so we made this token ballad, which I started on piano. Burton said it was so simple, he could never do that on piano, because he'd been playing piano since he was 6 years of age, in classical piano, and he wouldn't have done an intro that simple. I just said at the piano, went boom, boom, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, these arms long to hold you. And he said, let's make that the second line. Let's make it, these eyes cry every night, these arms long to hold you again. I said, no, it's got to be called These Arms. He said, no, it's got to be called These Eyes. So after we got over that little fight, we wrote These Eyes. It's got a lot of chords in it, and he sang it wonderfully. He was 18 years old when he sang that, and it's better than any Roy Orbison or Elton John song. There's like 4 octaves of singing in there, and it's one of his great vocals of all time.
We are speaking with Randy Bachman of Bachman Turner Overdrive, and they're going to be performing once again Wednesday, the 29th at the Bergen Pack in Englewood, New Jersey, and Friday, Halloween, at the Borgata in Atlantic City. And you actually do a couple of Guess Who numbers as part of these BTO shows, correct?
I have to. We start out with about 5 or 6 BTO slamming hits, album cuts. Give Me Your Money, Please, Sledgehammer, Not Fragile, things like that. And I say, okay, that was my band after college. My band after high school, before college, was called the Guess Who, and then we get a standing ovation from the crowd. And I say, we have a website, and everybody's been clicking our website saying, will you please do some of the Guess Who songs you do? So I said, here you go for all you Guess Who fans, and I want to thank you for decades, and thank radio for decades of airplay and support from me, Burton Cummings, Jim Cale, and Gary Peterson. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Here's your Guess Who moment. We do a 20-minute Guess Who medley, which we get a standing ovation from. Everybody's up singing No Sugar Tonight, No Time, She's Come Undone, These Eyes. We save American Woman Till Later, and we put it together with Stay Awake All Night, which is the BTO album cut that's pretty heavy metal. And the crowd loves it. And then the rest of the night's BTO. My son Tal's in the band now because I lost my brothers during COVID. So my son Tal, who grew up being taught drums by my brother Robbie, who's 10 years younger than me. Tal was 2 years old at the time. So Tal's down there singing and playing guitar, and he has a big hit, She's So High. So when he does that, it's from like 1999, 2000. It updates our whole show to be, classic rock from the late 90s. So we have a really great show for people. We've got 60s hits, 70s hits, a couple of random ones in between, and then Tal does She's So High near the end of the night. And it's just a great night. We have a lot of fun. I feel very overjoyed and blessed that we can still come out and play this music, which pretty much is a soundtrack to my life. And then I realized it's a soundtrack to everybody's life because thank you to radio and a classic rock format, everybody knows these songs everywhere, all over the world, and classic rock is back really, really strong. When I go on stage and the people are screaming, I'm going, is this the 70s? And they go, yeah. Is classic rock back? Yeah. Are you sick of rap? Yeah. Do you want to rock? Yeah, let's rock. And we start rocking, and the crowd goes berserk. It's really, really fun. It's like being a teenager again, playing at a community center where they're playing all big bands, and you come out and you play 2 rock and roll songs, and all the young kids jump up and dance to rock and roll, and the adults sit there watching them going, this music is terrible. It's sinful. It's from the devil, and all that stuff that they said about rock and roll.
Well, can I ask you about one of those classic rock and roll songs? Takin Care of Business, a huge hit song, and it's also a song that has an Elvis connection. Can you tell me about that?
It led to an incredible relationship because when I played violin and realized I couldn't read music because I tried it for the Winnipeg Junior Symphony, which is 85 kids, and I was trying it for second violin, and I made a couple of mistakes, and the guy pointed me to bar 32, where it's supposed to be an E flat note, not an E natural. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I went home and I said to my mother, I didn't make the symphony. Everyone was laughing at me. I quit. The next night is when I saw Elvis on TV, on black and white TV, on the Ed Sullivan Show. And my mother's sister was there, who's 10 years younger than my mother. And they were screaming at the TV set. And I said, why are you screaming? Well, look at him. He's so sexy. His name's Elvis. What's that called? It's called a guitar, and that's called rock and roll. I said, I want to do that. I'm sick of playing classical music. Everything has to be perfect. Rock and roll is imperfect. It's whatever you feel and whatever you want. And when you're feeling and wanting it, if you connect with other people, you connect with the other people at the time. It was freedom. It was quite fantastic. And then later on, I wrote Takin Care of Business. Then I saw, many years ago, I saw a special on HBO after Elvis had passed, and it was being hosted by Priscilla Presley. And they asked her about the song. And she said, oh, yeah, we were driving to the L.A. airport to fly back to Memphis, and Elvis heard a song on the radio by a Canadian band called Takin Care of Business. And he said, that's my motto. I want to be the TCB band. We'll be the TCB. I want to take care of business. When I say I want a sandwich, they were flying back to Memphis so you could have one of those Elvis sandwiches, which was like white bread, bananas, peanut butter, dipped in egg, and made like French toast with powdered sugar on. And all the Dairy Queens were closed in L.A., so he said, screw that, I own the Dairy Queen in Memphis, let's fly home. So they were going for an Elvis sandwich when he adopted TCB. Many years later, I met Carl Wilson. I was touring with the Beach Boys, and Carl, the manager of the Beach Boys at the time, used to be Elvis's bass player, Jerry Schiff. And he gave me the TCB thing that all of Elvis guys had around their neck on a chain. The TCB was a lightning bolt. Now that's on Elvis's tombstone if you go to Graceland. It's amazing. So that's my connection to Elvis, who changed my life. And in a way, I kind of gave him his motto, the TCB motto. Nobody can use that, by the way, except the Elvis Presley estate and me, who wrote the song.
We've been chatting with Randy Bachman of Bachman Turner Overdrive today on the show. And don't forget, they have a show coming up on the 29th at the Bergen Pack in Englewood, New Jersey. And the best place online to get information on the tour and where you're going to be is, I would assume, is it btoband.com?
btoband.com, Randy Bachman. You Google any of those, you'll see our website. I put out a song called 60 Years Ago. It's about us being in Winnipeg. It tells the story of Neil Young. And it'll be a new BTO album that we're working on now because we're getting all kind of offers. Vinyl is coming back. Turntables are coming back. I got out my turntable that's 30 years old, set it up, and my grandkids are saying, "What is that?" I'm going, "It's a record player." "What's a record?" "This is called a disc." "That's why guys are called DJs. That means disc jockey." "What?" DJ means disc jockey. VJ means video jockey who's playing videos on MTV or Much Music, right?
Right.
So the kids speak a language. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what a DJ is. I want to be a DJ. They think they think it's a name, but they don't know that DJ stands for disc jockey. I got on a plane once. I have a black T-shirt. On in the middle is a great big centerpiece, that you put in a 45.
Mm-hmm.
And a young kid says to me, and he's with his parents. He's about 14. He says, "Great shirt. What is that?" I look at his father. His father knows what it is. I say to him, "This is an old Aztec symbol that they found in pyramids, and it means 45 RPM." And he says, "What's 45 RPM?" And I say, "It's 45 revolutions per minute." And he said, "What does that mean?" I said, "It's for a disc." "What's a disc?" "It's a record." "What's a record?" And we have this conversation, and I say to him, "Let me ask you something. Do you know what a phone booth is?" He says, "No." I said, "Do you know what the yellow pages are?" He says, "No." I said, "You guys don't know anything." The father's killing himself laughing, by the way. But, that's how the world has changed. It's really evolved. So that's just cool. But I want to invite everybody out because the evening that we're going to give you is 2 hours of the soundtrack of your lives. You got to be up singing every song. And if you don't, at the end, I challenge the audience, and we play a medley of hit songs that are not ours, that are the Rolling Stones and AC/DC and Steve Miller, and everybody is up singing and playing air guitar and air drums, and the audience goes crazy because I say, "Look, we've all seen America's Got Talent. I want to see if New Jersey's got talent. Have you got talent? Yeah, okay, let's rock." And we play this medley that starts with "Hey You," and then we go into about 10 other songs, and the audience, and we stop playing in the middle, and the audience sings everything. They sing "Rockin' Me Baby," they sing "Rock You All Night Long," they sing everything, and they love it. So we become the backup band, and the audience becomes the performers. Just at the end of the day, we do Takin Care of Business, and the night is over, and it's a lot of fun. It's so much fun to get 2 or 3 or 8 or 10,000 people together in a room, and we're all strangers. But for 90 minutes, for 2 hours, we all become one throbbing blob of rock and roll, of happy days and the good old days of the 60s and 70s, and the birth of rock and roll. And here we are now celebrating classic rock because it's still here. It's become the biggest genre of music in the world. Classical is gone. Country will always be there, but classic rock has lived on because it's so different. Every band from every city had their own influence, like Aerosmith. These are all buddies of mine. Aerosmith, ZZ Top, Cheap Trick, Doobie Brothers. We're all the same classic rock, but we're all different because of our ethnicity and where we grew up and, what influenced us, what radio we heard at nighttime as kids. When I was in Winnipeg growing up, it was great. The top of the Great Plains, we would get WLS in Chicago. Mm-hmm. We would get WNOE in New Orleans. We would get Wolfman Jack somewhere in Mexico and hear this music that we never heard in Winnipeg, which is kind of a country western town. And me and Neil Young had these little things called rocket radios that didn't even have a speaker. You put a thing in your ear, a little earphone, and this radio didn't even have a dial. It was a little rocket ship you plugged into your wall, and somehow it picked up a radio station. And if you pulled the nose of the rocket out, it would change the station. And I would say to Neil, pull it out 3 little ticks, and you'll get Dick Biondi in Chicago, and he plays great music. And then I would meet Neil on a Saturday, going at Winnipeg Piano, oogling at the Gretsch guitar. And I'd say, did you hear those songs? Yeah, I heard the song. I've written a song just like that. And so did I. And it really influenced us a lot. It was really great.
It's all great stuff, and it's living history. Go and see it, folks. Randy, I want to thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us, and I wish you all the best with the current tour, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, and we will have a great Halloween together. See you soon.